Welcome, everybody. Tuesday, September 19th. John Aravosis here with the Aravosis Report, coming to you live from Washington, D.C. to talk about the latest news from the war in Ukraine. As always, introduce yourselves, say where you're from while I get TikTok rolling here on my iPad. There we go. Live. Ooh, there we go. Go. Oof. All right. Excellent. One quick second. Good. This is working. All right. There we go. Woo. Anyway, hi guys. Hey. Hey guys. Oh man, I'm like totally zoned today. I think I mentioned to you guys I hurt my back yesterday, like just bending over because, crazy things one does. I literally bent over and my back went and hey, relax. Sorry, the dog now wants to go say hi to her neighbor friends, but that's not going to happen. No. Oh God. Any case, so I'm like on like a muscle relaxant and something else, and it's just made me feel all day. Anyway, but I will survive. Anyway, hey guys, how are we? Let's, as always, we're going to wait about 2 minutes for folks to arrive on TikTok and YouTube, and then we will dive right in. We got a good amount of news today. Zelensky was at the UN. Not a ton of news. It's funny. It's a ton of news. It's not any earth-shattering news today, but a lot of news though, nonetheless. Hey, Denver. What else we got? Oh, so Ruby's dog had the surgery today. All looks like it went well. Thank you, Super Hornet. Just so folks know, we were helping raise money to do surgery for one of our moderators' dogs that had a growth in her mouth. And the surgery's done. Looks like it went well. So that's very good. So, yay. She can't pick her up until tomorrow, but still. Oh, hey, Danielle. There you are. That's funny. I mean, just because like now I'm recognizing your name, of course. In Quebec. Oh, you're in Quebec. That's why I noticed your Facebook. There was a lot of French, and I was like, okay, I wasn't thinking, of course, Quebec, and I should have thought of that. But anyway, yes. So Ruby's surgery went well, which is lovely. So I'm very glad for that. All right. Well, they're going to see. We're waiting a minute, guys, just another minute for folks to arrive. So we're small talking while we're waiting for folks to join us. Then we'll dive in with the news. Mandy can tell you more. Amanda can tell you more. Thank you, Arifa. But basically, the dog had a growth in her mouth. The growth has been removed. Doesn't look like it's spread. Thank you, Cami. They did an initial x-ray of the lungs. Didn't look like it spread. They have to do a biopsy on the growth first. And then, depending on what that shows, figure out what's next, right? But hopefully it's benign and all is well, but she'll be able to pick up the Ruby tomorrow. But apparently Ruby was awake and doing well. So thank you, Big Hawk. And thank you, JRD. Anyway, woo, man. What's going on, guys? Busy arguing with a Russian, seemed a half sensible one, but no. But no. Oh, well, there's always a hope. There's always hope. Thank you, Ellie, for the gift. All right, guys, I'll get rolling. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for the rose in my mouth there, Ellie. I am John Aravosis. This is the Aravosis Report. This is my show where we get together every Monday through Friday, actually, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S., and we talk about the latest news from Ukraine. The way the show works is I will go through the news first. I go through the stories that I think matter, try to give you guys a sense of why I think they matter, like what's going on with the story, what does it tell us overall about what's going on with the war, and then I take your guys' questions for a good half hour or so, maybe longer. You can also, if you really have to get a question in now, you can buy a super chat question over on YouTube. I always promise, as those are gifts to me to help support my work, I will always answer a super chat question next to immediately. I'll finish what I'm talking about and then get to super chat next. You can also do super stickers on YouTube, which are a great way to help me. You guys can do gifts on TikTok, which also are a wonderful way to help me. And I will always do shout outs for any of those, including the TikTok gifts, the ones that fly on the screen. I will always do a shout out when I see them as a thank you. As you guys know, I do this for free and I do it full time. So that's why I really appreciate the gifts, because you make it possible for me to do this by supporting me. So thank you. Thank you. Was it Life and Josh? Thank you guys for the gifts. All right, guys, let's dive right in. So today is day 573 of Vladimir Putin's special 3-day military operation in Ukraine. Thank you, Buford and Big John. Zelensky was at the United Nations today. Joe Biden was there too. President Biden spoke this morning. Zelensky spoke a couple hours after him. I have to admit, I get bored by speeches like this. Biden's speech was okay. Zelensky's speech was okay. I mean, I just like it. Neither of them was anything you wouldn't expect, right? Biden's calling for the world to take on world problems, including Ukraine. Zelensky went through the litany of why Russia's bad. And he did a good job of it. But I just, what I find is when I watch these things, I watch these speeches and I sit there and I'm like, I wish I was editing this speech, like Zelensky's speech. I wanted to grab it and put some like one-liners in. I thought it was okay, but all these speeches are a little boring to me. Personally, here's the thing, okay? Thank you, Kat. I think when you do a big speech as leader, okay? And especially like in the US, it would be the State of the Union, which is this ridiculous speech that goes on for an hour and 15 minutes and it's boring as hell. Or in this case, when you're speaking this big once a year chance to the United Nations, right? I think the speeches should be short, but I think they should be metaphorical, right? They should have a larger message. For me, going through, hey, you guys enjoyed it. I'm glad you did. So I'm not knocking it. But for me, I would rather have a larger metaphorical message. For example, whenever I talk about Ukraine and I talk about the importance to democracy and freedom and, well, in our case, America's role in the world and how we perceive our role and that kind of stuff matters more to me. But in any case, they both did fine. People thought the speeches were good. So what do you do? Joshua, I will get to that in a second. What else? So Zelensky talked about Russia weaponizing the global food trade, weaponizing the energy crisis, trying to force Ukraine to accept the results of the invasion, that Ukraine's supposed to just give up its land. Zelensky accused Russia of kidnapping Ukrainian children and teaching them to hate Ukraine. That's actually true. They have kidnapped a lot of Ukrainian children, and they have taught them to hate Ukraine. He said this is clearly a genocide. He said we must act united to defeat Russia so the UN can focus on other global challenges. He then talked again about hosting yet another peace summit. As you know, the Ukrainians have already hosted a couple of these, and they're hosting another one. What was I going to tell you with this? Oh, yeah. So interestingly, and I just saw this right before coming on with you guys. Interestingly, who doesn't show up today at the United Nations this week? Putin's not there. Xi of China is not there. Sunak of Great Britain is not there. Macron of France are not there. Putin, I kind of get, right? I mean, not that we would arrest him because I'm sure we probably would let him go, but probably didn't want to be pilloried. Xi, little weird, for China not to show up at the big event of the year. The Brits and the French, that bothers me. And apparently some American officials weren't thrilled about it either. Now, for the Brits and the French, the excuse is, and honestly, this is a BS excuse. The King, Charles, was doing a visit to France. So the British Prime Minister had to be there, and the French Prime Minister had to be, or French President had to be there. Because the King decided in the middle of the UN General Assembly meeting that is planned years in advance. Actually, they always know, not even years in advance. Every year, we know when this UN meeting is happening. It's the same time every year, right? King Charles knew what he was doing. And for some reason, he booked it during a week that would screw up all of this stuff, which is ridiculous. It really ticks me off. And the thing is, Zelensky's there, first of all. I mean, and Zelensky's there. This is the first time Zelensky's gone, right? Kind of big for him to go, okay? Biden's there trying to sort of keep everybody together. Thank you, Elizabeth. We should have had the top people in a row there. It should have been the Brits, the French, the Germans. I don't even know if the Germans are there. Did Schultz make it? I don't know about Schultz, right? But the top leaders of this coalition, frankly, all the top European countries should have been there, and it should have been. It just ticks me off. And using the King as an excuse is a bunch of BS. Because I guarantee you, the second they mentioned the King, hey, let's go this week, I guarantee you somebody said, well, that's the same week as the United Nations, right? And I doubt the King said, screw the United Nations. We're not sending our leaders there for the once a year show. Give me a break, right? Thank you, Tomcat. Just really ticks me off. Poland was there. Yes, Duda was there from Poland. That was good. I was glad to see that. But just very annoying anyway. So This was a really weird story from Sky News. And I have to say, thank you, Tomcat. And who was that? Tomcat with the heart, and who just did the rose? Ken with the rose. Thank you, Ken. Or actually, did another person do, or was it Ken's? No, there was another rose too. It hides that. This is one of the gifts that it hides from me, where if I don't look immediately, it throws it off the screen. Actually, sorry, Joshua's question first. Joshua says, what do you think about Canada-India issue? So really weird issue in Canada. And I do not pretend to be the expert on this. I've only read the story. Thank you, Charles, for the heart. But the Canadians believe that the Indian government killed an Indian dissident. I'm going to explain this poorly, but killed an Indian dissident on Canadian soil, basically acting like the Russians, just coming and murdering this guy. And the Canadians, I believe, kicked out the Indian ambassador. Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, brought it up to Moji. I'm going to get his name wrong. Is it Modi? Modi brought it up to Modi at the G20 meeting like a week or two ago. Very weird. Very weird. I mean, I don't know anything more about it, but it's Modi, not Medi. It's very weird. And Alex says 5 dissidents have been shot dead on Canadian soil. Yeah. No, it's a very weird. And somebody like India, where India is, the largest democracy in the world, India is not Russia. Acting like Russia and sending, little terrorist squads into other countries, into other democracies, really screwed up. I mean, really screwed up. U.S. response was weak. I wouldn't be surprised. Thank you, Dora, for the hat there. So there was a story today in Sky News that I it's one of those where I just, it reminds me of that Madeline Kahn clip with, there were flames. Listen to this. There is acceptance among the G7 leaders. So the G7 leaders are the leaders of the top economies. So I'm trying to remember G7, but G7 should be US, France, probably US, correct me if I'm wrong here, US, France, Germany, Great Britain, Italy, maybe Japan, and who else? Canada. Am I right? Did I get it right? I said Japan and then Canada. I think I got it right. Okay. So we're talking like, 7 of the largest economies, if not the 7 largest democracy. Oh, thank you. Okay. I did get it right. Italy used to be. Italy was. Are you sure Italy's not? Italy kind of kept going in and out, but I think Italy would have been there. Check, double check. Oh, no. India's not in the G7. No. In any case, so thank you, Fred Watts, for the gift there. So this story, listen to this. So there is acceptance among the G7 leaders that Russia is settling in for a long-term conflict with Ukraine, a senior U.S. official has said. The diplomat, who has to remain anonymous but is a serving member at the State Department, was discussing a meeting of G7 foreign ministers last night. Quote, there was a recognition that we see Russia settling into this war for the medium and long term. Like, this is news. They said it was clear that the West now had to plan to back Ukraine militarily and financially with that in mind. Okay, so a bunch of foreign ministers from our countries got together last night and went, okay, stop the presses. This war in Ukraine, I think it might go on a while. And here's a crazy thought. Don't laugh. But maybe, thank you, Adam, maybe we should be planning how to support Ukraine over the long term. Like, thank you, Lorianne. What the, right? I mean, this kind of stuff drives me crazy, people. Thank you, Brigitte, and Bonnie. I could see when the war started, Italy, I assumed Italy was there, Elijah. Thank you. Yeah, Italy's part of the G7. They always were around the 5th largest economy, give or take. They kind of came and went a little bit, but Italy's always been there. Yeah. But like at the beginning of the war, I could see absolutely this issue. Thank you, Dora, by the way. I could see this issue of we all thought Ukraine was going to lose at the beginning of the war, right? We thought they were going to lose in a week. Then Ukraine surprised us that first week. Thank you, Elizabeth. Ukraine surprised us that first week. Then Ukraine surprised us that first month, right? After the first month, maybe 5 weeks, right? Russia invades February 24th. The end of March is when the Russians had to start pulling back from north of Kyiv, right? Remember, the Russians had invaded like all the way down here. And at the end, February 24th, end of March, the Ukrainians started pushing the Russians back. So the Russians had to go back to the border again. I mean, that was huge. Okay. At that point, we knew this war was turning into something else. We knew this war was not just a couple-week venture. Then 2 weeks later, what happens? The Ukrainians sink the Moskva, which is the Russian flagship. It is it's the ship that also is the Russian warship Go F Yourself ship. And the Ukrainians sank it 6 weeks into the war, right? At that point, and this is the point at which Ukraine destroyed that 40-mile-long convoy, right? That 40-mile-long convoy. Hey, Benjamin in Nigeria. Nice to see you. At this point, everybody knew this war was not going to be over in a few weeks, and everybody knew that Russia was going to have a difficult time. The idea that these guys are going, this is new, that this war may go on for a while, and we need to adjust our strategies to the war possibly going on for a while. I mean, like somebody said on TikTok earlier, water is wet. But it really just boggles my mind that that's the kind of non-planning going on. Thank you, Jan, James, and Richard for the gifts there. This was interesting. So this was from Institute for the Study of War. 3 Russian brigades likely suffered heavy losses in Ukraine's liberation of Klishivka and Andreevka, south of Bakhmut, according to the Institute for the Study of War, which is a very good defense think tank out of Washington, D.C. Now, Andreevka and Klishivka are 2 little towns south of Bakhmut. The Ukrainians are still trying to take Bakhmut back from the Russians over here in the eastern Ukraine. And just last week, they took 2 towns that are rather crucial towns, though, for getting the area back, Klishivka and Andreevka. The towns are basically, the really benefit of these towns are they're high up. So because the altitude's higher, they're able to shoot down, I believe, at Bakhmut itself, but also, just as importantly, at the highway that goes by there, the road that goes by that the Russians use to provide logistics to their troops. So it's huge that Ukraine is now in a position to hopefully make it harder for the Russians to get the supplies they need, the food, the water, the weapons, the gasoline, the diesel, right? Well, according to Institute for the Study of War, they looked at reports from Ukrainian military officials that the 3 Russian brigades, had been rendered combat ineffective. Also, they noted that a Russian commander had said the commander of the VDV brigade was killed. What is good about that is basically, the Ukrainians were, well, this was a decent, thank you, Kevin. The idea here was where we've always been talking about is why did Ukraine decide to go after Bakhmut, right? And it looks like part of the reason, thank you, LWD, was to basically exhaust the Russian troops, to make the Russians pull troops away from elsewhere. And, to some degree, maybe they did. There's a lot of reports out today about possible Russian sort of exhaustion amongst its troops. So, maybe it was a good idea. The grain ship, No, I did not talk about the grain ship. Sorry, I did some videos on TikTok earlier, and I'm forgetting what I told you guys and what I told TikTok. So good grain ship news. You know how, and I sort of give the summary on this in case folks are not familiar with the background. The Russians at the beginning of the war basically wanted to cut off Ukraine economically. And one of the big ways of doing that was to stop Ukraine from exporting grain. Ukraine is one of the big exporters of grain and grain-related products in the world. The idea was also to cause a crisis in the grain industry, in the grain market, cause prices to go up, cause countries in Africa and the Middle East to not be able to get grain because Ukraine's one of their big suppliers, in order to create a food crisis. Lots of different things Russia was screwing around with. Basically, as Zelensky said at the United Nations today, the Russians weaponized grain. Okay. Well, the Ukrainians have come up with a way of trying to get around sort of the Russian blockade, and they got another ship out today, which was very interesting. So what Ukraine is now doing, which is actually very smart, is Ukraine is getting ships coming out of, and I don't have it here. This is Odessa, a little bit further south. I think is it Chornomorsk, I think is the name of the town, the port. The ships are leaving the Ukrainian port. This ship today actually left with grain itself. Previously, the previous ships we've had in the last week or so, the 4 ships or 5 ships previously, have not actually been grain ships. They've carried metals, they've carried rapeseed oil, things like that. This was the first actual grain ship, okay? And hugging the Ukrainian coastal waters, which basically are protected by Ukraine itself in the waters. The Russians can't get close enough. And then once they get further down here, they are running along Bulgaria, actually Romania first, then Bulgaria, then Turkey, then through the Bosporus, which is this little isthmus. Thank you, Adam, into the Aegean. And what they're finding is by staying in NATO territorial waters, the Russians aren't able to attack because A, the Russians can't enter NATO territorial waters, right? It's a private property issue, so to speak. B, the Russians can't fire into NATO territorial waters because it would be an act of war. This whole thing with the drones crashing causes enough of a stir. If Russia were to intentionally fire into NATO territory, I mean, that's an act of war. So what's interesting with this is the Ukrainians have basically found a successful way now. This was the first actual grain ship that went today. Successful way of the ships getting out. But what the Russians are doing to try to get around this, thank you, LWD, and they've been doing it now for a few months, the Russians are trying to blow up the Ukrainian grain facilities so that they can't even get the grain to the ships, right? So the Russians are blowing up warehouses in southern Ukraine, Odessa, but also along the Danube River there by Romania. They're blowing up the actual port facilities. So you've got the warehouse containing the grain, but you also have to get the grain to the ship, and you need, machinery and docks to do that. So they're blowing up the docks and the machinery so that you actually can't move the grain from the warehouse to the ship. So if they can't kill the ship, they're going to try to kill the mechanisms you use for getting the grain to the ship. Nonetheless, big deal. I mean, this was still a big deal that Ukrainians were able to do this. Let's see what happens next. Julius with a super chat question. I read earlier today that Wagner Group may be returning to Ukraine under new leadership due to high casualties. Have you heard anything about this? I have not seen anything about that at this point. Not at all. Now, that's interesting. Okay, I'm going to look further up. There's a story I was going to mention in a bit, and this kind of makes me wonder. So, okay. Interesting you say that. There's a story from CNN. I'm just going to read this to you. Ukrainian special services were likely behind a series of drone strikes and ground operation directed against a Wagner-backed militia near Sudan's capital. CNN investigation has found, raising the prospect that the fallout from Russia's invasion of Ukraine has spread far from the front lines. Speaking to CNN, a Ukrainian military source described the operation as the work of a non-Sudanese military. So basically, somebody is firing drones against Wagner-backed militias in Africa. And the way the drones are flying is very characteristic of the way the Ukrainians fly the drones. Thank you, Marcy. And my dog's walking around, is the way the Ukrainians fly them. And some footage that was released of the drone showed a screen, the computer screen, showing how you control the drone in Ukrainian. It's a Ukrainian screen. So, Ukrainian military source, when pressed on whether Kyiv was behind the attacks, the source would only say that Ukrainian special services were likely responsible. 2 commercially available drones widely used by Ukrainians were involved in at least 8 of the strikes with, thank you, Lee. Very, very pretty flower. Appreciate that. The rose. 2 commercially available drones widely used by Ukraine were involved in at least 8 of the strikes with Ukrainian text seen on the drone controller, as I mentioned. Experts also said the tactics used, namely the pattern of drones swooping directly into their target, were highly unusual in Sudan and the wider Africa region. What I'm trying to figure out here is if you're Ukraine, okay, you don't just do stuff for fun. You don't just say, let's bother Putin in Africa. What the hell, right? You've only got limited resources. You're in a fight for your life. Thank you, Lee. You need to make sure that, thank you, Martin. You need to make sure that every military action you do is the biggest bang for the buck that you can get, right? That it has the most impact. And what is interesting to me is I don't know here, but Ukraine's smart enough that they wouldn't just be doing this like idiots, right? They would be doing this for a very good strategic reason. It makes me wonder if Ukraine isn't trying to 2 things going on here. One, screw with the Wagner group because of these very concerns like Julius just said. If you're afraid of Wagner coming back to Ukraine, then sabotage Wagner's work in Africa so that they can't leave, right? So that basically you've decimated the troops that the Wagner guys set up. Thank you, Lee. And now the Wagner guys have to help them set up more troops, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is, it sounds like the Ukrainians are just trying to piss off Putin again, right? For Putin, it's a big deal having these African contracts. It's a lot of money, it's a lot of diamonds and things like that, but it also is a way that the Russians sort of exert and impose their power on Africa. For the Ukrainians to sort of screw that up it's a very Israeli thing to do. I mean, it really is. It's asymmetrical. It's not just asymmetrical, but it's asymmetrical in a geographic way. Like, you're going to attack us in Ukraine, we're going to attack you in Africa. I'm very fascinated by this, but I'm curious. I will be curious to read some more analyses as to what exactly could this be? Very interesting. But no, I had not heard that Wagner was talking about going back into Ukraine. Granted, Putin's in trouble, but honestly, they've so screwed those Wagner guys. I'd be very careful if I were Putin. I mentioned last week that the Wagner guys can't get jobs, that basically the Russian government has blacklisted them and told companies not to hire them. So I would not, to the degree to which Putin has now knifed the Wagner guys in the back, I'm not sure I'd want them anywhere near Russia. Thank you, Chief, if I were Putin, but who knows? Erdogan being an idiot. Here's a surprise. So Turkish President Erdogan, who's just a PITA, he is doing an interview with PBS, Public Broadcasting, here in the States on Monday from New York. Thank you, Susanna and Chief, for both of you guys for the gifts. And he, hang on a second. Oh, you know what I did? Oh, no. Oh, sorry. You know what I did? I had jumped ahead. Well, I jumped ahead to give you that story, and I want to go back to where I was on the list. Hang on a second. There we go. I jumped ahead to give you that story because the super chat question reminded me of it. And I thought it was worth mentioning. A couple more stories here, and then we'll do a quick break. Ukraine. This is interesting. I'm not sure what it means, though. Ukraine refused to accept a recent batch of 10 Leopard 1A5 tanks sent by Germany, saying they need repairs that the Ukrainian military is not able to carry out. Interesting. I mean, I don't know. It's just interesting. Kind of embarrassing, too, as far as that goes. You know what I mean? But interesting. So let me do a quick break, and then we will talk about Danish aid. What else have I got here? Danish aid, Erdogan being an idiot, and and some new stories about a Russian airstrike. So one of the things that I do to support my work and support Ukraine is holding auctions. I've got really cool auctions of cool stuff that I get from Ukraine, and we do it over on Discord, in our Discord community, because it's the easiest place to do it. Discord's free. You guys can check it out. It's discord.aravosis.com. And one of the things that I've been doing at the auctions is, thank you, Down to Earth, or 50% of the auction proceeds I send back to Ukraine. We do it via my friend Vlad. We've been sending it to mostly military aid recently. We've been making camouflage nets, but also using it for humanitarian aid for charities. In any case, we've got about 9 different items. Very cool. Remember, it's discord.aravosis.com. You can see the auction stuff on the left. And the auctions are up tomorrow. So go check it out, because we've got a lot of cool stuff. In other words, the bids all end throughout the day. I will show you guys, I've been showing you sort of all week, a couple different cool things. We've got, kind of a really neat fridge magnet, but hand painted by a woman in Ukraine. That's a mother of somebody with the charity we're working with. And the mother is an artist, and she made this. Very nice. We've got a very cool bracelet, actually, from Ukraine that Vlad's daughter, Vicky, his 4-year-old daughter, bought for us. And it is of the Ukrainian military. That's the Ukrainian military logo. But it's a cool bracelet. I like this. A few more things. A very cool piece of a Russian fighter jet. This is from an Su-34 fighter, shot down in Ukraine, we believe, around December 2nd of last year. Thank you, Ellen, for the gift. And it's got 2 pieces, actually. This is sort of the frame to some degree, the smaller, longer piece, and then this is attached to it. The bigger piece is attached. The color, I think the color is really cool. The color inside is weatherproofing. The color on the outside is very likely color on the outside of the plane. We're not sure, but it's a good guess. Anyway, very cool piece of a Russian fighter jet. Good size, you can see. I love this kind of stuff. I think they're very, appears to be an engine cover. Interesting. Well, I had another engineer look at it, Magical, and we weren't quite sure what it would be covering though. Because it clearly is, this is like the big panels put onto this. In any case, it's very cool. Two more things. Three more things. A challenge coin. This is a challenge coin commemorating the battle at the Azovstal steel plant. You can see it says Azovstal and it shows the steel plant. This is the plant in Mariupol in southeastern Ukraine. Really, there we go, this way. And it is a coin commemorating the 2,000 Ukrainian troops, including the Azov battalion, who held off the 14,000 Russian troops for a good 2 months. And the coin is commemorating that, which is very cool. And two more little things. A t-shirt. There's more. I'm just showing you a few of them. A t-shirt. But the t-shirt's cool. We've got actually camouflage nets. A real Ukrainian military camouflage net. This is a winter one, but really cool. It's the real deal because we've been fundraising to make these nets, and the folks making the nets made us some to auction off so we could get more money for nets. So this is really neat. Like I said, real Ukrainian camouflage net. It's 9 feet by 2 feet, which would be 3 meters by 2/3 of a meter. Some t-shirts that Vlad made for the folks that are making the nets. The t-shirts are really cool because Vlad made these, and there's only a couple dozen of these in the world. It says Harkovu Mir at the top, and that's a Kharkiv Peace, the name of the charity. It shows a HIMARS with really angry teeth, a camouflage net over the HIMARS, and then below it, it says, what is it in Ukrainian, Moskvalna Sotnia, which means the Camouflage 100. So they named themselves the Camouflage 100. I love this because I like t-shirts, but I like t-shirts that are original, and this is an original. You're not going to get this anywhere else. And it's in Ukrainian, and it's the camouflage, and it's a HIMARS. I mean, you don't get better than a HIMARS on a t-shirt. Final thing I will show you, because this is our most popular piece here, is this is a Russian 30 millimeter spent shell that has been turned by Ukrainians into trench art, which is they carved the Ukrainian trident into the shell, you can see. And then the other side is an angel. So you can see, you kind of have to see, I did a video of it that you can almost tell more easily, right? But you see, I mean, you can tell though, it's the angel. Here, let me do this. Now, there you go. You almost have to have a light behind it so you can really see a little better. Very cool. Some of you came up with the idea of using this as a candle holder, which I had not thought about, which is a great idea. Like you could put a candle inside here, a skinny candle. You could also put a votive candle. You could put one of the electric ones, but since it's metal, well, and Deb is saying Christmas is coming. I keep sort of forgetting to mention the Christmas stuff because Christmas is coming. And okay, for me, I only buy stuff that I would want. So hard to say otherwise, but yeah, this stuff I'll send to the UK because this has been turned. I mean, this is so chopped to pieces. This is no longer anything scary. So I would send this to the UK. Yeah. Because it's just a piece of art now. It's chopped apart. No one's going to use this for anything military. Put it that way. Any case, so this is there too. You guys go check them out. They're really cool. One more day. The auctions end tomorrow. Just so you know, the VIP auctions are for the monthly subscribers, for the folks that are basically supporting me on a monthly basis. All the rest of you can check out the public ones. All right. It won't get hot if you have a lighted candle. It probably will get hot, but then put it on top of a coaster. I've got like a stone coaster I would put it on, I mean, look, be careful how you use it. I'll put it that way, but no, I hadn't thought about Christmas, but it's September as far as starting to find cool Christmas gifts, kind of cool. But yeah, do check it out, guys. I'm going to sort of try to get a lot of the cool stuff out in the next month or so people can start to really check stuff for Christmas. So, all right. A few more stories here. Denmark will donate to Ukraine an additional 45 tanks purchased in cooperation with other countries. Thank you, Denmark. Ukraine will soon receive M1 Abrams tanks, according to the U.S. Secretary of Defense. He says a few of them should be arriving shortly, and the rest of the 31 that were promised by the U.S. should arrive after that. Initially, they were promised to be received. Thank you, Kankaranga. They were promised to be received by now, but they haven't arrived yet. Thank you, Jonathan. Evi or 6Evo wrote a super chat question. Is the conflict in Armenia worrying? You know, I don't know. I will not claim to be an expert on Armenia. I've got to read up on Armenia and Azerbaijan yet, but they're two of the former Soviet republics, right? Independent countries now, do not like each other. The Russians have been sort of keeping the peace there. The Russians are no longer able to keep the peace, I think, because they're having such problems in Ukraine. It's getting, especially on the Azeri side, of the Azerbaijan side, it's getting a little closer to war breaking out. Thank you, Elizabeth. Depending where you are, who cares, right? I mean, to some degree, I care as a global citizen, but honestly, if you live anywhere in the West, war between Azerbaijan and Armenia is not going to affect you unless you're Armenian or Azeri or Azerbaijani, right? So, and that's what I'm saying. Like, no, it's not worrying. If anything, let's see what happens though. I like the fact that the Russians are having problems. I like the fact that the Russians now have a different part of their country or right across their border that's turning into potential problems that the Russians have to focus on, but they don't have the energy, the manpower, or the troops to really focus and to keep these things. So it's forcing the Russians to multitask, and that's not a bad thing, you know? Shadeblade, war is bad. I agree. War is bad. I don't like war, but the fact that this is giving the Russians heartburn, I'm not feeling too bad about that. Meanwhile, Norway is also set to donate about 50 tracked cargo carriers to Ukraine. I had to Google these things. It's a type of vehicle that is able to maneuver in terrain inaccessible for wheeled vehicles. Tracks meaning literally like those tank tracks, like that long thread, right? That's over the wheel. You got all the wheels and then that one long thing, because it's made for going over things that a normal truck wouldn't be able to go over. The cargo carriers can transport ammunition, food, and water to Ukrainian troops in the field. A couple more questions here. Hang on. Thank you, Elizabeth. All right. Armenia, Julius had another question, and then Cliff. On the subject of Wagner, I also read that many of them are having problems getting jobs. Yes. And earning a living in Russia in spite of their amnesty. Poor, murderous war criminals. Yes. I did a long story on that last week. I think it was last week. On all the reports that the Wagner guys, it looks like the Russian Ministry of Defense, or FSB, sort of the KGB follow-on, has told businesses in Russia not to hire the Wagner guys. And either they're just getting turned down, they won't even accept their applications for jobs, period, because they're Wagner, or they're being told, well, you're former criminals, we don't want you, even though they got a pardon, because the pardon in principle maybe was supposed to wipe out their sentence. They're being told, we don't care if you were pardoned, you're criminals, we don't want you. The Wagner guys are not happy because Putin is basically knifing them, but doing it kind of slowly, by basically starving them and their families. So yes, that is true, Julius. Cliff had a question. All right, Cliff, you always have to make it hard for me. There it is. Okay, there. I think I found it. Who is Zelensky meeting with right now in New York City? With Benjamin Netanyahu. He was meeting with Netanyahu today. Okay. Oh, I did. Thank you, Amanda. Fortunately, it was right there above, but thank you. He was just meeting with Netanyahu. Will Milley, the Joint Chiefs, be at the DC meeting? Here's a question. Will they offer anything new? I don't know. Basically, Zelensky is going to meet with Biden at the White House later this week after he leaves the UN. And then he's going to meet with U.S. senators, because the senators are the good guys, most of them, and the House members are terrible. I mean, the Republicans in the House are terrible on Ukraine, a lot of them, whereas most of the Republicans in the Senate are very good on Ukraine. So Zelensky is going to be talking to the U.S. senators. He's going to be meeting with Biden. I'm not convinced. I don't know. I don't know whether Biden would have Milley with him in the room. Maybe he would. It's an interesting question. I don't know whether he'd rather have a bilateral, you know what I mean? Like Zelensky and he really talking. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for the gift, talking on their own, or whether you kind of want the defense guys with you because obviously you're talking about defense, and both of them could use their defense guy, right? Now, will they offer anything new? Typically, when you have this kind of a high-level meeting of big allies, and mind you, when one of them's at war, you would be offering something big to commemorate the get-together. Typically, that's what you would do. It would be normal for Biden to, for example, announce that he is going to be giving Ukraine the ATACMS missiles that Ukraine's been needing, and all the experts say Ukraine needs. The White House put out a story last week saying it's not going to happen this week. Let's hope they've thought that through a little more. Let's hope, because that would be the obvious thing to do, would be to announce ATACMS this week. But as I said, I can't defend these people. Biden is intent on doing this very slowly. And, there's you just can't fight wars very slowly and incrementally is not the way you fight anything in life, wars, politics, or anything else. You go and you do it and you try to win, but you don't go, let's do just a little bit. And next week we'll do a little bit more. And next week we'll do, it's a good way to boil a frog, but otherwise it doesn't really do much else. So I am not pleased. All right. Julius, another question. Thank you guys for all the super chat questions. Don't forget the TikTok gifts too, guys. Thank you. Just curious, have you ever thought about having viewers sponsor Ukrainian families or soldiers, like send care packages, pen pal notes, etc.? No, but not opposed to it. I guess we'd have to figure out how we do it. Thank you, Shane. We'd have to figure out how we do it. I'd have to, thank you, Red Watts. I'd have to talk to some Ukrainian charities, like here in the States, for example, and find out, we could raise money for them, certainly, The care packages I like might be hard to do, though, and my guess is going to be that the charities would rather have money because typically, thank you, Red Watts, I know the Red Cross works that way for disasters. Thank you, Nicola. The Red Cross in America prefers to get money rather than food, because if they get food and clothing and stuff, it's logistics. It's stuff they've got to figure out. If they get money, right, the money can go and give to whoever needs it. So I don't know. I don't know about that. Tim, we are giving them billions, and we're going to give them more until they're free, because that's who we are. And because, as I've said before, thank you for the hat, by the way, there. As I've said before, we're giving Ukraine billions, and we're destroying the Russian army in the prospect of doing it, and not spending a single American life. And we are destroying the Russian military, which is one of our two big enemies in the world right now, is Russia and China. And the Russian military is getting destroyed with next to nothing. So yeah, we are giving them billions, and it's the best billions we ever spent. Absolutely fantastic. And if you believed in America and you believed in democracy and you actually believed in defending our country, you'd be spending the money. You'd be gladly spending more. Thank you, Chazak, for that. Yes, Red Cross, we know, has lots of issues. Exactly, Andy, with Ukraine. Thank you, Buffet, for the hat. Richard Fisher says, adopt a Ukrainian family for Christmas by sending gifts to the family. Yeah, I'm not sure how to do it, though. Thank you, Jeremy. I'm just not sure how you do it. It's very, I fear it's too labor intensive, because literally we'd have to figure out each of you getting one family and who gets the family, right? And only one of you can get it. And all of a sudden we're coordinating 100 of you. I just don't know how you do it. I agree with you. It'd be neat, but it's easier to just give money to a charity that buys things for the family, Anyway. Oh, that's funny. A Ukrainian father on my son's soccer team takes 20 luggages over at a time to Ukraine over there. Oh, you mean to bring supplies back? Oh, wow. Wow. I wouldn't be surprised though. Yeah. Yeah. Let me see. Let me ask. I've actually got a nice Ukrainian charity in Chicago that I've been talking to, dealing with refugees, because they're the people who helped me find the woman. We did find a woman to help take care of my mom, a caregiver. Ukrainian immigrant. I was very excited about that. So that'll be neat. She's going to start soon. But the charity not the charity, the refugee group she works with, or she came in with, I should say, I could always reach out to them. Thank you, Texas, and ask if there's any kind of way of us helping. But I agree with you. It's more fun to actually like purchase stuff, than just give money. Because I feel like when you give money, you don't really know what happens to it, Whereas if you bought a Christmas gift for the family or whatever that would be, or for the kids, I just don't know. I don't know. Christmas charity is a neat idea, though. That's an interesting idea, though. Let me see. That's an interesting idea. Yeah. I'll have to see. Okay. Anyway, yeah. Remind me later, one of the mods or something like that, and I can check. Vlad would have it over there in Ukraine, but for the refugees over here anywhere in Germany or wherever too. But it's easier for me if I'm doing it here in the States. We just have to see. Yeah. All right, guys. Let me see. Was there a couple more stories? The UK will provide Ukraine with tens of thousands more artillery shells in the coming months. Erdogan. So Erdogan let me just stop with this Erdogan story. Erdogan, president of Turkey, pain in the butt, comes out and does an interview on public broadcasting in the States. Okay. And he says, listen to this. I have no reason not to trust them, he says of the Russians. Boy, there's a quote that's familiar. I'm not going to go there, but I have no reason not to trust them, he says. To the extent the West is reliable, Russia is equally reliable, Erdogan says. For the last 50 years, we, Turkey, have been waiting at the doorstep of the European Union. At this moment in time, I trust Russia just as much as I trust the West. Well, the problem for Turkey is that, act like animals and you don't get to be members of the European Union. Turkey has been occupying Cyprus, northern Cyprus, for 50 years. And that's why Turkey has not been able to join the European Union. If Turkey wants to pull out of northern Cyprus and stop acting like the Russians, Turkey would be able to join the European Union. But for them, this is Erdogan playing games again. And I'm telling you guys, I don't think he's going to let Sweden join NATO. I don't think he's going to let them. I think he's going to play games. Next month is when the Turkish parliament comes back from vacation. They come back in early October. And I think that jerk is going to once again clog things up and just stop them because he wants to join the EU. And honestly, I read a sort of an analysis of this a couple months ago saying that everything he'd been through, everything that Turkey has done to NATO, and how he's dragged NATO through the mud, and he's refused to help. He was stopping Finland, and now he's stopping Sweden, and just playing all sorts of games with NATO, and frankly, still playing games with NATO and Turkey, right? He won't abide by the sanctions, this kind of stuff. Do you want this guy doing the same thing to the European Union? He's going to do the same. He's going to be just as bad as, if not worse than idiot Orban in Hungary, right? And the analysis I saw said the European Union is looking at what Erdogan is doing in NATO, and they're going to say, "You're nuts. We're going to take this kind of extortion. He's going to take us hostage too." But I'm telling you, he's going to play around with Sweden again. He's going to screw Sweden around, and he thinks he's going to join the EU, and he's not going to join the EU because Greece. There is a 0% chance that Greece is going to let Turkey join European Union until Turkey gets out of Cyprus. And, that's it. Julius, didn't mean to add to your workload with a charity idea. Oh, I don't mind. I know you have pretty full days. No, that's okay. I think it's a neat idea. I was just telling you, we'd have to figure it out because it would have to be done we want to do it sort of globally so it makes it easy. You know what I mean? Rather than putting one family in touch with one person, it's just too hard to do. But no. I think it's a neat idea, but let me see if I can talk to people and try to get some kind of a sense of it. All right. See you, Chazak. All right. Let's end with that. We'll end with that. I'll keep going with questions and stuff now, guys. Let's do Q&A. Remember, another way you guys can support my work, consider becoming a subscriber on TikTok. That's via the SNN, the TikTok subscriptions, where you can become a monthly subscriber. It's somewhere on the page. I think at the bottom, there may be a star or something. For those of you on YouTube, it's right by the comment box. There should be a little $sign, and you guys can click it. Super chat, super stickers, and you'll also see membership. And membership is a way, again, you can support with a monthly donation, which would help me a lot. You can also do it via Ko-fi, which, thank you, Timothy Leary. Those of you who know Ko-fi, you can find my link in my bio on TikTok. Click that link. You guys can find it at the bottom of the screen. I've got the whole address there. And you can do it via Discord. I'm hitting you with my tweezers. You can do it via Discord. You can do it via Twitch, using Amazon Prime on Twitch, as Jens just said, to my Aravosis account on Twitch. And that might be it. That might be it. So there's a number of ways of helping, but if you would consider becoming a monthly subscriber, that would help me a lot. That children's hospice is an interesting idea. That's an interesting idea. Let me ask Vlad. Now, the one thing I will say is, I think the Ukrainians aren't as big on Christmas gifts as New Year's gifts, but that's okay. Vlad, hold on a second. I'm going to open this up. I'm going to actually send a message to Vlad, even though he's asleep. He's not going to see it. I'm going to send a message to Vlad while we're broadcasting right now, so I don't forget my friend Vlad in Ukraine, because I think that's an interesting idea. Let me write this again. Let's consider doing, could I type this well? Let's consider doing some kind of fundraiser. Hang on. Again, for kids in Ukraine for Christmas/New Year's, because New Year's is their big holiday. Good idea. Yeah. Okay. I just wrote Vlad. So he'll see it in the morning when he wakes up and at least have it on the, that's right. It's their first Christmas on December 25th. That is true. That is true. A vote to join the EU has to be unanimous, all countries agreeing. I am not the EU expert, but I know that Greece is stopping it. So yeah, my suspicion is this has got to be the way. Just like with NATO, every country has to agree who's a current member. I suspect for the EU, it's the same thing. Am I correct, guys? For the European Union, every country has to agree for a new country to join. Let me know, but I think so. I think so. Yes. Okay, that's what I figured. Yep. How do you sign up with Twitch? On Twitch? Oh, on Twitch, you can use your Amazon Prime, for example, and direct it to my Aravosis account on Twitch. Otherwise, the Twitch folks have to give you more details on that. All right, what do we got, guys? Let's do questions. More questions. The missile mystery. Yeah, we don't know. So there's a story today from the New York Times, although I will say, I have seen some people say the New York Times may have gotten ahead of themselves, that there was an attack last week on a market in Ukraine, and the Times is reporting that they think it may have been an errant Ukrainian missile that hit the market, not a Russian one. The only thing is, I saw a very interesting debunking by a French journalist. Basically, they were looking at the roofs of cars and seeing the missile cross the roof. The problem is, and somebody showed this online, it's very weird when you're looking at, basically it's like looking at mirrors in a row. And just because it's passing one mirror first doesn't mean it literally passed that mirror. Very complicated stuff here. But if you're low on the horizon, you would see it first on the car nearest you. You wouldn't. Bottom line is the New York Times might be right. The Ukrainian missile might have been the one that hit the market by accident, but it's not really clear yet. And the Ukrainians are still sticking to their guns and saying they investigated and it wasn't one of theirs. So, who knows? Yes, Keps is saying, I read today that Russians are recruiting Cubans to do construction work in Ukraine. When they get there, they're uniformed and sent to the front lines, the trafficking Cuba complained about. Oh, interesting. Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. Just looking here. What else you got, guys? What's happening with Russia and China in Mexico? I don't know. And we have no border. I don't know what's happening with Russia and China in Mexico. I have no idea. What is that? I don't know what that means. No idea. What else, guys? Thank you, Joe Colela. Or Coleja, depending what your ethnicity is. I'm going to guess Italian, though. Colela. What about the health of Kadyrov? No news on that. What would happen with Chechnya and Russia if he dies? From what I'm reading, it's not really clear. The Chechen opposition was destroyed, they said, like 20 years ago. So it's not like there's a democracy movement that's going to, overthrow the evil overlords if Kadyrov dies in Chechnya. It's more likely, I was reading, that basically other people with power are going to try to take over. The Russians obviously have a big hand in what's going on there. It still is potential turmoil, which isn't bad. But what I read was basically if Putin were to disappear or lose his job, you run a better chance for something real happening in Chechnya, the dictators being overthrown, than just Kadyrov dying. But at this point, he might be doing okay. Tommy, will this bog down again as the weather changes towards winter? We think so. The Ukrainians are saying they're going to keep fighting. But the concern is that when the rainy season kicks in, which could be as early as 2 weeks from now, maybe 4 weeks from now, it is going to be harder for the Ukrainians to do anything off-road. They're going to have to stay on roads to do it because off-road is all mud. And it's just, trenches are a mess. I mean, even if you're defending, it's a mess because it's wet, but if you're attacking, it's a mess too. I mean, it's all water and, water up to your waist and whatever else. So it very easily could slow down the Ukrainians. Yes. But we'll see. Tired guy saying, do you think Ukraine should offer the North Korean workers coming over to work, if they are in the occupied territories, asylum and citizenship if they defect? They won't have a better chance to escape North Korea. True. Who knows if they're actually coming? I mean, I'm not convinced. I think the idea of North Korean workers coming to there is crazy. I do think there's something weird about it because if you've got North Korean workers there and the North Korean workers get killed in an attack, what does that do for North Korea's role in the war? That's what could get interesting because the North Koreans are freaking nuts. They're crazy. So their civilians get killed in Ukraine, and then Kim, the dictator of North Korea, gets pissed and does something crazy. I don't know. I'm not sure it's the brightest idea of Putin to bring North Koreans there. Also, how good of workers are they? I mean, it's like the worst economy in the world. They're probably worse workers than the Russians, you'd think. You know what I mean? Julius, thank you again. If Kim sends you're funny. Same thing. If Kim sends, you said the same thing. That's very funny. If Kim sends North Koreans as laborers, how long until they start defecting? Well, that's the thing. You'd think these guys would try to defect. I think we'd be ecstatic to have them defect. Why not? Right? I mean, why not? That's great, right? Have them defect. That's perfect. So, because also it's just as embarrassing as hell to the Russians at that point, right? How do we wrangle the likes of Turkey and Hungary? I don't know. Honestly, I think they need to be threatened to some degree, except we don't want to start a precedent of losing members, just like with Brexit. We don't want to lose members of NATO and this kind of stuff. But honestly, I would say, you know what? We've got Finland and we're going to have Sweden now. Maybe if Turkey, for example, if Turkey is so upset with the West, let them go move in with Putin. I mean, the Turks, really? You want to go in bed with the Russians? Be my guest. Seriously, I'd be like, best threat ever. Go for it. Just wait for the amount of time until you come back, till you come back crawling to us. Julia, is the U.S. courting India to get them to stop aligning with Russia? I suspect so. The U.S. wouldn't really condemn India today after Canada accused them of killing a Canadian citizen. I heard about that. People were saying that. Biden's way is to woo. Biden likes to win people over. So Biden would not be the kind of guy who would beat up India. Biden would want to woo India, right? So I could see with something like this as being one more thing where Biden would be like, no, let's talk to them privately. And at the same time, Biden is trying to get the Indians to not be as supportive of the Russians, cut back their commerce. They're buying, I forget whether it's oil or other liquid natural gas, but they're buying energy from the Russians. So, it's... Yeah, I would guarantee you we're working privately trying to get the Indians to back off of supporting the Russians, and that's why we're not criticizing them. Absolutely, yeah. Annoying, but maybe, then again, maybe he's right. Maybe that's the best way to do it. I don't know. Only because I don't know necessarily what's going on behind the scenes with the Indians. I don't know whether we've had any success at all So I'm up changing my temperature a little. It's cold now. Whether we've had any success at all getting the Indians to sort of back off supporting Russia. Maybe there's been some we don't know about. I don't know. Daniel, we had a delegate of Yupik Alaskans over here, and they had mentioned how they're upset that Russia has been barred from the Circumpolar Council. How tied are the Yupik to Russia? No, I have no idea, Daniel. I mean, who the hell knows? Now, I will say, I mean, I did a lot of work in Alaska when I was working for the senator from up there, and the ties are very close between the Alaskan natives and the Russians. They've, some of them have family back and forth. I mean, they've always had very close ties. So I wouldn't be surprised that they don't want, because, and it's true too. I'm going to guess that some Russia native, we call them Alaska natives, so I don't know whether the Russians call them natives as well. The Eskimos, so to speak, those guys. Whether the Russian version is going to be, I doubt they're going to be spies. You know what I mean? I doubt they're the kind of people we want to ban, but nonetheless, they may have been caught up in everything else. Yeah. I just know that there is absolute kinship overall. I couldn't tell you whether it's the Yupiks or who the hell it is, but there is a kinship absolutely on both sides. And they were having connections. I mean, when I was working there 30 years ago, there were lots of connections back and forth between them. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, no, that's yeah, to learn about what we're doing. Yeah, no, that's yeah. So I mean, they're probably legitimately upset. I mean, because they do have a lot of context, and I'd say, that kind of connection, I doubt it's harmful for those guys to come over, because also they're Russians, but are they really Russians? I mean, I'm not convinced they're really Russians. I mean, they're native, they're Russian natives, which, like you said, Yupiks or whatever, that's different. They're Siberians, they're not really Russians, right? Yep. Yeah. Tulikivi says Siberian and Alaska natives have close ties just like Estonians and Finns do. Interesting. Okay. Interesting. Thank you. I would block me for the heart. What else we got, guys? La 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 la. It is getting dark earlier. I was seeing somebody else tweet about that earlier. How it's funny, like it's 7:00 and the sun has set already. God, it's crazy that it's like this dark already. Too bad I'm not a diplomat. We'd have world peace long ago, and Russia and China would have been checked long ago. Russia and China would have been checked. I just don't know that I'm enough of a diplomat, because I do have an in-your-face side to these things. I absolutely believe there's a role for diplomacy, but I also believe that sometimes you've got to stand up to people and punch them in the nose, metaphorically, whether it's the Russians or the Chinese or whoever. So, how's the Russian economy doing? It's hard to know. I don't think we know how the Russian economy is doing. It's still growing. Then again, I just think there is no way that this much of the Russian economy is under sanction and it's going just honky dory. I just don't believe it. But honestly, I think it's very difficult for us to know what's actually going on with their economy. Inside Russia on YouTube. I don't know who's that though. Are they good witches or bad witches? Inside Russia. They're not like crazy people, are they? The sun is already setting up here. Autumn. Oop, that's right. You guys are going to get dark there soon too, I'm guessing. All right, guys. What else we got? Good witches. Okay, good to know. Do you think more Patriot systems would make a big difference in the war? Yes. I don't know if we have them. I don't know to what degree we've got, how many we've got to spare. But the more Patriot systems the Ukrainians have, the more they can protect their cities. Thank you, Super Hornet. That was a big problem they were having in Odessa, because they were using the Patriots in the north for Kyiv. So, especially with winter coming, to protect the electrical facilities and everything else, that's okay. User 435. Have a good night. But I think because Russia, so much of what Russia does are air attacks. So much of what they do are air attacks. I would think any kind of defense is going to help Ukraine more. Constantine of Inside Russia. He may be the guy I follow on Twitter. There's a Constantine on Twitter who's excellent at this stuff. He may be the same guy. That's interesting, Craig. I wonder, because the name Constantine too, you know what I mean? It's sort of a unique, it's Greek, but it's kind of it's probably could be Russian too. Could be. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Very interesting. Yeah. There's a guy, Constantine, on Twitter who's very good too that I follow. Thank you, Super Hornet. But I don't know if it's the same guy. Don't know. Thank you, JR. Anything else, guys? Otherwise, we could we could go to Discord for a little bit tonight. I haven't been there in a few days, and we're finishing up sort of early enough now. 1.5 hours. I'll have to check it out. Okay, I'll have to check it out. All EU support. Okay, maybe. I'm not sure. Are you going to pay for Twitter? That's a tough one. That's a tough one. Thank you, Joe. I don't know. The problem is I use Twitter to get a lot of Russian news, Ukraine news that's very useful. Otherwise, no. It's because Musk is now talking about charging everyone for Twitter. Part of the problem becomes, though, if the people I follow for Ukraine news are not willing to pay for Twitter, then it's not a point of the write-off. It won't cost much. It's a point of giving someone who basically coddles white supremacists and Nazis, who's now part of the far right, who's an anti-Semite and a bigot, giving him my money. I have a problem with that. I have a big problem with that. So yeah, it's not a matter of how much money. If you ask me to give money to basically Nazis, I'm not going to say, well, how much do you want me to give? If it's not too much, I'll give money to a Nazi or a Nazi enabler. No, thank you. He's horrible. Yeah, let me do the recap. All right, so, but we'll see. I don't know. We'll have to see. Day 573 of Putin's 3-day special military operation. Biden and Zelensky spoke today at the United Nations. The leaders of France, the UK, China, and Russia did not attend. There's acceptance among the G7 leaders that Russia is settling in for a long conflict, and the G7 needs to start thinking of how to address that long term, this war, which drives me up the wall because, like, we didn't think of that. Canceled your Tesla? Good for you. And I mean that. Counteroffensive. 3 Russian brigades likely suffered heavy losses in Ukraine's liberation of Klishivka and Andreevka, south of Bakhmut. The first ship with Ukrainian grain left the Black Sea port through the temporary corridor, and they successfully escaped without Russia getting them. Ukraine refused to accept a recent batch of 10 Leopard 1 tanks from Germany, saying they needed repairs. Denmark will donate to Ukraine an additional 45 tanks purchased in cooperation with other countries. Ukraine will soon receive M1 Abrams tanks from the U.S. They're supposed to arrive, at least some of them, in the next few days, according to U.S. Defense Secretary. Meanwhile, Norway is also set to donate about 50 tracked cargo carriers to Ukraine. The UK will provide Ukraine with tens of thousands more artillery shells in the coming months. Ukraine's special services were likely behind a series of drone strikes against Wagner-backed militia near the Sudan capital in Africa. So it looks like the Ukrainians might be launching drone strikes against Wagner mercenary interests in Africa, which is just wild. Erdogan said today, the dictator of Turkey, wannabe dictator of Turkey, to the extent the West is reliable, Russia is equally reliable. He's whining again, and I think he's going to screw over Sweden with joining NATO. He's going to try to milk more from NATO. And finally, the New York Times reported that September 6th missile strike at a market in Donetsk, eastern Ukraine, could have resulted from a Ukrainian missile malfunctioning. Some people are still saying they believe it's the Russians, so who knows? All right, guys, let's go to Discord for a little bit. It's been a few days. Join us. It's discord.aravosis.com. You can go check out our auctions too. Like I said, I've got a lot of really cool, very cool auction items. Very cool from Ukraine. So go pieces of a Russian fighter jet. Very cool. Shot down over Ukraine. But go to Discord. I will be hanging out there. We've got a part called John's After Party. So go to the after party and hang out. Good night, Danielle. And otherwise, I'll see you guys tomorrow night. Okay. So 6 p.m. Eastern time, US. Join us here for tomorrow's update. Otherwise, like I said, feel free to go over to Discord. We'll hang out for a good 20 minutes or so, probably. And we just hang and shoot the breeze. Make sure to turn up your volume because I'll be talking. You'll be typing. It's discord.aravosis.com. All right, guys. Talk to you later. Yep. Dobre nič. Exactly, Marie. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Otherwise, all right. Bye, y'all. Bye-bye.